This is Locke. Can you speak up, please? No, I got to get to my wife, who is down in the hospital. She's about to have a baby, and you would not understand why I am going there. No, you cannot follow me. I am driving to meet up with this woman at the hospital. I am about to see her give birth to the baby that I impregnated her with, and it is my responsibility now to become the father of this new child, so that way this child does not have to suffer about not having a father throughout the course of his life. But of course, you're probably wondering if Tom Richardson will ever review this film, so I will put the wheel down and let him do that. So, hey guys, the reason why I saw that is because throughout the course of the film Locke, which I'm going to review for you today, we see Tom Hardy basically driving a car throughout the entire film. The whole film basically is him talking to people on a Bluetooth capable phone on in his car while driving out to something that you'll see him you know drive out to throughout the course of the movie. And so basically, Lock, you guys, it's an independent film that really didn't reach my area. We do have a Sundance cinema in my area, strangely enough, so we get to see a lot of the independent stuff here. But for some odd reason, Lock just didn't premiere here. They just didn't show it here. And basically, Locke is a story of Tom Hardy, who, most of you are going to recognize him, who played Bane in Dark Knight Rises. He was in Warrior, and he was in The Drop recently. Got to rub my nose there. Um, he basically plays a guy who works with concrete. He's not really a construction worker because he seems to specialize in concrete for some odd reason. And so basically, at the opening of the film, we see him get off of work. He immediately goes to his car for some odd reason. It's quite obvious that he has to rush off to something. And that's basically the only shot of the film where we really basically see him outside of this car. And so he's driving off, and he's obviously talking to a ton of people on this Bluetooth capable phone in his car. And throughout the course of the film, we start to realize why he's rushing off to this place, why it's taking him so long to get there, why he's kind of not making any stops in this car while he's on the highway the whole time and talking to all these people. And I guess the best way I can say it without spoiling anything is basically he kind of like what you saw in my opening if you were really listening closely. He basically is about to become a father of a child from a woman that he basically met through work, and he's just kind of taking responsibility for impregnating her by accident, basically. And he's driving off to the hospital where she's about to give birth, so that way he doesn't have to become the bad father figure that you learn. That his dad was basically for him. That he didn't have much of a father figure growing up, and so for this child, he's hoping to give this child more of a father figure since he really didn't have one himself. So obviously, there's more things that happen with that being said, which I'll leave for those who still want to see the film. But that's probably the best way I can say without spoiling too much. Is basically he's out to meet up with this person about to give birth, who is obviously really far away from him from his job, and he's trying to drive out there and talk to people from work and things like that. And so basically you'll see it unravel throughout the course of the film as to why it's so important that he meets up with this woman and things like that. So I really enjoyed Locke, you guys. Am I going to own it and praise it throughout the course of my life? Probably not, but um, it was definitely a unique experience. I really haven't seen a film where it takes place entirely in a car. It's not like the film Buried, where Ryan Reynolds had to be stuck in a coffin the whole time, and it's not like the Blair Witch Project, where they're stuck in a forest the whole time. But Locke was kind of this interesting experience because it's just simply a guy in the car driving off. We've all been in a long car drive before at some point in our lives, whether it's like a long road trip or anything like that. And basically, he's just kind of giving him time to think to himself and really kind of, make up for this huge mistake that he did and all this kind of stuff. And it's just kind of a really interesting experience. So, for my positives and negatives of Loki, guys, overall, it has a very interesting sense of unraveling itself. I like how we kind of learn as to why this guy is taking so long to get to this long distance destination in his car. It just has a very interesting sense of unraveling itself and really letting us know as the viewer exactly what Ivan Locke is up to. That's the character's name, and why he wants to drive off so far in his car. I thought this film had a unique way of telling its story. I really haven't seen a film before where this basically it's just a guy driving in a car the whole time, and throughout the course of the time in this car, we kind of learn why he's has to go this long distance drive, and it's just kind of a very interesting experience, like I was just saying. And I like how the film plays off of how one mistake can kind of have a domino effect in life. Kind of, if you do this really bad thing, obviously, then this really bad thing is going to happen next. Then this really bad thing will happen next. And then, obviously, there's this huge sequence of bad events that happen because this one's big mistake that you've done. And I kind of like how the film has that domino effect. And you really get that domino effect going on with Tom Hardy's character's life in the sense that this one mistake is obviously going to impact his life very much so. Tom Hardy really gives a great performance here. I really don't know if the voice recordings were happening while he was, acting these scenes out in this car, or if he really had to improv and really had to pretend, and memorize the script basically, and then they obviously added the voices in during post production for them from the Bluetooth phone and stuff. But just great performance from Tom Hardy. You really get the emotions of what's kind of going on in his head in this car, just his frustrations, him really trying to negotiate with people and get them to understand what's going on in his life at that point, and just a really good performance from him. For my negatives of Lockheed guys, and this might be a little bit too obvious, and some people might think I'm being too harsh with this criticism, but I think Locke spends too much time in the car. Because it was just so like a breath of fresh air. Like there was even times in this movie where I just wanted to go back to the opening scene. But it's like, there's more to life than just sitting in this car. And I think because there was so much character development with these characters on during this phone conversation and things like that, it felt like it just spent too much time in the car. I really would have liked to have seen a closing scene maybe where maybe he got out of the car, we got to see what happened next and things like that. So basically he gets in the car and he's in the car throughout the rest of the movie. So it's a very long time in a car, just to warn you. I would actually like to see some of the actual FaceTime with some of these characters that Locke is talking to throughout the film, because there's some scenes and some interactions where it's very hard to kind of get what that person's going through and what Ivan Locke is about to put them through with what he tells them over the phone and things like that. I think just actual FaceTime with these characters would really get a sense of what basically Locke is doing to them, because let's just be honest. I mean, voice work for these characters just wasn't quite enough to develop them the way that Locke is being developed himself throughout the course of the film. So I think actual FaceTime with these characters, whether that be at the beginning or at the end of the film, really would have helped the film out a lot, and there would have been some payoff and there would have been some setup that I think that would have really helped out Locke in the long run. So. And overall, Locke really is an acquired taste viewing. If you're really not into this idea of this guy sitting in a car throughout the course of the movie, and basically it's just phone conversations the whole time. If you think that's cool and intriguing, like I did going into the movie, I think you'll have a good time. But if you go into this film just kind of renting a random movie from Redbox and really not knowing what it's about, and if you're kind of more of a casual moviegoer that just wants action scenes and things like that, Locke might not be for you. But if you're into this idea of this guy driving in a car and it's all these phone conversations that really unravel the story and really develop the characters, I think you're going to have a good time, and it's worth a rental in this case. So Locke is going to get an 8 out of 10 from me. I think it's a good film. I think it's worth experiencing. I think the overall experience is very unique and interesting. But if you're really not into the idea to begin with, you might not have a good time. I really can't say to go out and buy this film because I really don't think it's worth buying in that sense. But I do think it is worth experiencing and worth watching at least once. So that's always a good thing to hear. So Locke gets an 8 out of 10. It's a pretty interesting experience, but at the same time, I don't really think this will become an instant classic for anybody.